Well, I'm very excited to be here with Dr. Jack Singer. By way of introduction, I just have to say I've known Jack for over a decade, since 2008, right, Jack?
Yes, that's correct.
Jack wrote the foreword for one of my first books. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him, and I'm really excited to bring his wisdom to you. Um, just to give you a little background, I hope I don't make you blush here, Jack, but I want to just tell people where you're coming from here, because Jack spent 30 years as a professional sports psychologist, and he's worked with 3 Olympic gold medalists, many elite teams, top performers of all kinds. And back in the last financial crisis, he was asked to come and help financial advisors deal with their own psychology through that crisis. He's helped advisors through one crisis. He's here for the next crisis. And this is a guy who really knows. I mean, Jack's written 4 books on stress mastery. He's been on CNN, Fox Sports, Glenn Beck, ESPN, been on the faculty of 6 universities. I mean, assistant professorship at the U.S. Air Force Academy. I could literally go on and on about Jack and his keynotes and all the things. But the bottom line is he really knows. And today, he's going to talk to us about stress mastery techniques and how advisors can use these techniques not just to help themselves, but to help their clients and to better their business and their own personal lives in this way. So Jack, thank you again. Really appreciate your time today.
It's my pleasure, Robert. And yes, I've known you since 2008. And actually, as I started getting involved with financial services professionals, you provided a springboard for me because you made a lot of introductions to people I wouldn't have known otherwise. And I've always been grateful to you for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Jack. I believe in what you're doing. So it's a privilege to do that. So let's get into some of these things. So I know one of the things you talk about is how events and situations like the one we're in right now aren't actually the thing that cause our stress, which is hard to believe. What is the real cause of stress?
This is the biggest discovery in the field of psychology and psychotherapy in the last 100 years. You know, it used to be thought, Robert, that things that happen to you directly lead to your emotions and your reactions. We know now that is not the case. Things can happen to you, like this pandemic is a situation, or if an advisor has a difficult client that's on the phone, that's a situation. Or if the advisor is having difficulty getting new referrals, that's a situation. But those do not cause our emotions. Our emotions are caused by the conversations we have in our head as a result of those situations. And the good news is we have a choice as to what conversation we're going to have in our head. So let me give you an example. One time I was scheduled to give a speech to 500 advisors, and there was a blizzard somewhere in the country. And when I got there, they said many of the advisors never got there, and there were only going to be 50 people in the audience. That's an event. Doesn't cause a mood or emotion for me. My conversation causes the mood or emotion. So if I would have said to myself, what a waste of my time flying across country to give this presentation and only 50 people will be there, that would have immediately set off an alarm system in my brain, like the fight or flight system, that would have set me up to develop anxiety, frustration, maybe even anger, irritation. It would have done that automatically as a protective device. But I had a choice. What I said to myself was, wow, what an opportunity. It's almost like doing group therapy. I'm only going to have 50 people there. I'll be able to maintain eye contact with each one of them. Everyone's going to get their questions answered. It won't be like a room of 500 people where I only see 10 people. This is a great opportunity, Jack. Now there's a different emotion. The fight or flight system doesn't get turned on. Nothing like that happens. So that's the key.
That's beautiful. Okay, so I'm hearing what you say. I agree with it. I believe in positive self-talk, but how do you do that when the whole world is in the middle of a pandemic and a crisis like this? I mean, what's the positive self-talk for a time like this?
Okay, so let me just explain before we get into positive self-talk that we talk about. A lot of people come into pandemics or into market volatility or into situations with a history of a belief system that is not in their best interest. For example, the belief system may be something like, if I'm not perfect, I'm a failure. Or the belief system may be, I need to avoid confrontations and fly under the radar at any cost. Or the belief system may be, I'm really not as good as everyone thinks I am, and sooner or later I will be found out. These belief systems form what we call our core values. And many times they're toxic belief systems like the ones I just gave you, as opposed to, I don't have to be perfect and I can still be very successful. I don't have to always have the answer for the client. I can look up the answer. That doesn't make me look weak. Or I don't have to avoid confrontations. If I have a toxic client that is causing undue stress to me, maybe the best gift I could give myself on my birthday is to find someone else to deal with that client. Okay, so these are ways that you start shifting or reframing your thoughts from the things that were enhancing your anxiety to things that now remove the anxiety. So when you talk about the pandemic, what is the reality? The reality is we don't know when it will end. That's true. The reality is we're hoping that none of our relatives or friends get ill. That's true. But what is not true? This will go on forever. My career is over. I don't have any idea what I'm going to be able to do from now on. I'll never be able to go to another sporting event. These are the kinds of catastrophic comments that people make that cause their bodies to go into the fight or flight mode. And when your body goes into the fight or flight mode, it changes the chemistry of your blood. And when that happens, you get panic attacks, you get anxiety disorders, you get depression, you get feelings of hopelessness and helplessness, all caused by that thinking pattern. Mm-hmm. Much more appropriate thinking pattern is, we will get through this like we got through the last one. Things will be better again. The market eventually will come back like it always does. Clients, I can do something proactively with them so they won't come unglued every time there's volatility in the market. I can talk to them about my core values in investing with them and why we've invested, for example, in equities that pay big dividends, because those dividends are continuing to add up regardless of the market, or whatever your core values are as an advisor. I can build things into their portfolio so that it will brace us against a future episode. Let's say next year, if there's another virus or another flu that comes about. So there are things I can do proactively. I can talk to my clients about whether they want to sell now or whether they want to buy now, and make rational decisions with each one that makes sense for them, given their situation and their risk factors and so forth. So there are ways to think rationally. The first way that someone thinks is usually irrationally, based on fear. What if? The two worst words ever put together in the English language are what if, because they're always followed by something negative in your head.
I hate that too. I can't stand it. Yeah.
What if, or I hope I don't, or I shouldn't have done this, or I should have done that. Those are the things that get us into trouble.
Yeah, it's great insight, Jack. These are powerful stress mastery skills. I know there's others too. When you think about advisors, what are some other stress mastery skills that they can really work on cultivating right now?
Well, as a matter of fact, I have a mental toughness routine, a 5-step mental toughness routine that for your viewers, your advisors, I would be happy to offer that free for them. So at the end, we'll give some contact information. But mental toughness is one way we can do this. Mm-hmm. The athletes that I worked with over the 37 years all told me that the mental toughness routine that they practiced in the locker room or right before the game was much better than listening to music and everything else that a lot of the other athletes did. And you can do it in 5 minutes. It involves recognizing the negative trigger thoughts that just led to your anxiety, and then doing some deep breathing, which I can go into more detail if you want. And then it means visualizing success instead of remembering the last disappointment you had. And then it means changing the whole thought process and moving on from there. So there's a 5-step program that's really easy to do. People can do it every day. And I have been teaching financial advisors to do this at their desk before the day starts, mm-hmm. before they even recognize that negative thoughts are coming in, but especially to use it when they get a call, for example. Your secretary says, so-and-so is on the phone, and you feel your heart jumping because you know that that's a client that believes that he or she is the only client you have, and you should be interrupted no matter what you're doing and attend to their needs. So your heart starts beating, you're getting frustrated, angry, frightened. What do? Well, I'm going to teach you how to do that in 5 minutes to get rid of that tension and to deal with that client appropriately. And by the way, a lot of this material, all of it actually, is in the course that we can talk about later and in my book, The Financial Advisor's Ultimate Stress Mastery Guide.
I love this. And, you know, I would actually love to take the time to go through the 5-step thing right now. I think because it is a course and you can provide that, that's wonderful. I'd like to do it for myself. But Jack, I think for now, the principles that you just described, as I'm hearing you, I'm wondering, even if an advisor masters this and they get a hold of their own anxiety and stress, and I think a lot of advisors are mentally tough anyway. You got to be in this business. What about their clients though? Because sometimes like we can be tough mentally, but then we got these clients who are demanding or who are frightening or frightened, I should say. How can we help them? How can we use these principles to actually make our clients' lives better, help them stay calm and deal with their stress?
Terrific question. And it's, as you mentioned, it's something that's needed by every advisor. The answer is active empathic listening. I teach financial advisors how to use active empathic listening, which is a tool that psychologists have been taught to use with their clients. And it really involves patiently listening to what the pain is that you're hearing from the client rather than feeling like you have to react right away. And most of the time when you're hearing something, especially if it's coming across to you in an angry tone or a frightened tone, you feel like you have to respond right away, which is a mistake. By the way, active empathic listening is a tool that everyone can use. It's important in relationships, for example. It's important with your teenagers who people have trouble communicating with a lot. And what it really means is that you have to patiently try to put yourself in the shoes of the client. So give me an example of a statement that a client could make to an advisor during one of these situations.
Oh man. Okay, good. Let's see. I was going to ask you for some examples, so this is a great chance.
And
So, hey, why didn't you pull me out of the markets back in February when people started talking about this thing and you could see what was going on in China? I thought you had a global perspective, and now you leave me in all these equities just as this thing crashes down in every other country. I mean, I could have, I've been seeing on TV, there's other advisors that pulled their clients out back in December. Why didn't you do that?
Okay, so that's a typical question that could be asked. And the usual response from the advisor is some kind of defensive response, like, I didn't really think this was going to happen, and the markets have been going great since Trump took over, and I thought they would keep doing great, and so forth and so on. I have some things put into your portfolio to prevent this, so it's not a complete disaster. You haven't lost anything because we haven't sold anything. Those are the kinds of.
I'm getting mad hearing that, because now I did lose money, and what you did wasn't good enough. So I'm getting frustrated hearing that.
Exactly. And that's why I say that would be the typical response of the advisor. But now let's use an active empathic listening response. Again, the key here is that I want to make sure I'm paying attention to what the person's saying. I'm not distracted. For example, if this is a phone conversation, I don't have my secretary handing me notes while this is going on. I'm not on the computer playing a card game. I'm listening to the client, and I want to limit my distractions, and I'm paying attention to what he or she is saying. So the first response would be, I can hear the fear and frustration in your voice because you believe that I didn't step up to the plate and do what you hired me to do.
That's right.
And then I would check to see if that sounds like it's on target. Okay. And if they say, no, that's not what I mean, or you didn't get it all, then I would keep repeating, paraphrasing in my own way what I hear them saying. And once they say that's right, I can understand your frustration and I can understand your fear. Okay. Now it's time for you to make a response to that. Once you're on board with them, you're in their shoes, you're feeling empathy for what they're feeling from their perspective. Now it's time for you to tell them something that they can go home with that will be okay. I am here for you at any time to explore your portfolio and your situation and to make rational decisions about buying and selling and the timing of buying and selling. Part of my core value in working with clients just like you is not to do anything on an emotional basis, but to do it on a logical basis. I have spent my entire career understanding that market fluctuations can't be predicted with 100% accuracy by anybody, And if you stick for the long run, you always come out ahead. I can't tell you how many clients have told me, I shouldn't have let you sell because now look at what those stocks are doing a year later. So we are going to make a rational decision about your portfolio, what needs to be done now, if anything, what could be done in pieces as the market moves forward, and decide what to do. But if you trust me and the core values that I brought to the table when you hired me, then realize that I am not frightened by any of this. I'm not happy about it, but I know how to deal with this, and we are going to deal with it on a very rational basis, and you will be fine. So what I've done now, before responding, because just as you very accurately said, Bob, if I started responding with anything defensive, that just made you angrier, and that's exactly right. The same as if a person's having an argument with his spouse, and the spouse says, you never pick up after yourself. And he starts responding with, why do I have to do that? I work hard. You're supposed to pick up. You're real around. That would lead to nothing but disaster. But if the spouse said, I understand your frustration because you work hard too. You have a child at home. You're cooking. You're doing the laundry. And for you to have to pick up after me seems like an unbearable task to add to it. That's a whole different response now, even though you still make it.
We didn't agree to this being a personal coaching session for me and my marriage here. I don't know.
Exactly. So the key is you start by understanding where your partner's coming from, even if you don't agree, or the client, even if you don't agree with their position, you don't, for example, if a client said to an advisor, you put me in all the wrong equities, even if that's not accurate, you don't start by saying, no, I didn't. Let me show you. That's the wrong response. The response is, so from your perspective, you're feeling really angry, frustrated, and frightened now because you think I made a major mistake in your portfolio. All you're doing is lining up with that client. They feel respected when they know you're listening to them. And that takes the tension away from the discussion. It takes the emotion away from the discussion and can lead to rational, open-minded discussions to follow.
Solid gold. I love it. That's so practical. Thank you, Jack. I really appreciate that. And I know that there's much more that we can learn, but I also want to cover some other topics here today. I know one of the things that you've helped a lot of advisors with is really seeing the distinction between how average advisors handle things versus the most elite and successful advisors. And I know situations like this especially really bring out the differences. So can you tell me, what are some of the most well-researched habits that really drive this difference?
That's a key question. There's one trait that has been shown over 40 years, Robert, with insurance companies, with financial advisory companies, with every kind of sales job you can imagine, in multiple companies around the world, consistently, to differentiate what I call a championship type performance from a good performance. And most people would like to know, how can I develop the championship performance? And that's why all my programs are lead to developing the mindset of a champion. The one trait in the mindset that differentiates okay from great is having an optimistic explanation of disappointing events rather than a pessimistic explanation of disappointing events. Let me give you examples. It's not as simple as the glass is half full or half empty, okay? Optimism and pessimism, by the psychological researchers who study this, has to do with how you interpret an unfortunate event. So, an unfortunate event for a financial advisor could be you have a seminar where you're hoping a lot of people, that your clients will bring a lot of people to the seminar. Very few people show up, and you consider it a waste of money and a disaster. Okay? Now, a pessimistic interpretation of this event inside your head would be something like the following. Well, that figures. I always screw up doing these things. I probably didn't market it correctly. It's my fault. This is probably going to continue to happen. And it's a reflection of how I'm generally a screw up. And there are other parts of my life where I mess up too. And I hate having to face this all the time. That would be the worst way you could interpret this, but it's a common way.
It's a lot of despair there.
Yeah. And it's based on three dynamics: temporary versus permanent, my fault versus other factors cause this, and a reflection of my life in general versus this is a simple thing. It has nothing to do with my life in general, where I'm very successful. So an optimistic response to that is, this is a temporary setback. I need to sit back and find out how I marketed this and what I said about it and why I didn't bring in more people, and I can fix this. Mm-hmm. Number two, this really doesn't have a lot to do with me because my presentation was wonderful, and it always is. They didn't come here in the first place. They didn't even know what the presentation was. So this is extraneous circumstances. I need to figure out why more people didn't show up. And number three, even though I'm disappointed by this, this is not reflective of who I am. I'm a grinder. I know how to bring people in. I know how to get referrals. I've been successful for 30 years. Why would I let something like this set me back? Now, most people are pessimists, frankly, and they don't do the optimistic way until they're taught how. So I have a whole seminar on teaching people to develop an optimistic mindset based on the books that were written about this and everything. But the three key things, whenever disappointing or unfortunate things happen, is look at it as temporary, not permanent. It's not really your fault, or if there was something you could have done differently, what did you learn from it so you can move on to the next opportunity? And third, certainly this is not reflective of you in general. You in general is wonderful, and that's where you have to give yourself positive affirmations. Remember the things you've done that have been wonderful instead of the things you've done that haven't been wonderful. It's similar to a golfer. If a golfer makes a bad shot, hits the ball into the water, you think they're going to do well the next time if they're reflecting on what they just did, or if they think about the last time I played this hole, I hit it perfectly onto the green. Let me visualize that instead of what I just did and hope I don't do it again.
Yeah, we see it all the time with athletes. Once they make a mistake, sometimes they fall apart.
That's right. Yeah. Because they keep worrying about making the same mistake. And by the way, if you say to yourself, I hope I don't hit it into the water, or I hope I don't double fault that serve, or I hope I don't forget my foot, anything like that, your brain goes into lockdown because it again thinks that there's something threatening going on, and it tightens your muscles, which makes it impossible to do what you just asked yourself not to do.
Okay, I love this point because I'm thinking about it in advisor terms right now. So in the very same vein, Jack, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you're an advisor and you say, man, I hope that client doesn't get mad again. I hope I don't lose that client. I really hope I get this client because I need the revenue really bad. And if I don't get them, it's going to be a blow. Same thing, right? Like that type, saying I hope I don't, and you're thinking about the negative, that's sabotaging your results.
Absolutely, positively correct, for a reason that's hard for me to explain, but it's a real reason. The subconscious mind ignores negative words a lot of the time. So if you say, I hope I don't lose this client, your subconscious mind hears, I hope I lose this client. That's why people are always saying, it's the opposite of what I said to myself. How did that happen? Okay. The other thing that's happening is anytime you say, I hope I don't, that's a threatening thing that you're telling yourself. So you're turning on the fight or flight nervous system. It's locking everything down, making you anxious, which is a higher probability that what you don't want to have happen is exactly what's going to happen. Your voice is going to crack. Oh, I can give you a great example of this. Many, many years ago, many years before I met you, I came up with an idea for a TV show. And the TV show, a live TV show, have a psychologist in the audience dealing with people's problems, like Dr. Phil, but way before Dr. Phil was invented, right? So I got a producer at an ABC affiliate in Miami to give me an audition. I drove from Fort Lauderdale, where I was living, to Miami for the audition. And the whole time I was driving, I was giving myself negative, self-defeating comments like, what if I don't know what to say when they ask me a question? Or what if I mess this up? It was all what ifs, okay?
Not you, Jack. Come on, you don't do that stuff.
This is before I realized what was going on. Okay, so I get there, and sure enough, they say, okay, here's a woman, make believe she's your patient and you're on the show. Start talking to her. And I'm saying to myself, what am I supposed to say? And I got myself so wired up. I sounded like Don Knotts. Remember Don Knotts? Or Jackie Gleason. I didn't know what to say. I completely messed up the whole thing because my brain went on lockdown. Instead of saying, I can do this. I know what I'm doing. I know how to be a psychologist. I know how to talk to people. I never gave myself those messages. That was the biggest lesson I learned as a psychologist, by the way, to never have my clients do that again.
That's a powerful lesson, Jack. And I'm listening to the things you're saying, and it's impossible for me to summarize all of it, but what I'm hearing over and over again is the things you say in your mind have to be controlled. And if you direct them the right way, it will influence positive outcomes. And if you don't, then the negative outcomes will happen, and it's already starting inside your mind. And I believe you, I agree with it. And yet I'm thinking to myself, we live in this time where there's so much uncertainty. So many people are struggling. There's so much negativity swirling around everywhere. And these negative thoughts are going to pop up. I mean, it's going to happen. So how do you condition yourself to recognize those, isolate them, and defeat them before they defeat you?
Well, you have a knack, Robert, of asking. You're like a laser beam slicing through into the core of what's important, almost like you're a psychologist yourself.
Maybe I missed my calling, Jack.
Yes. What you're really asking me to do is to teach you, or to teach your listeners, a 3-step method to stop negative thinking dead in its tracks. So let me do that. And I'll go through a little slowly so they can write this down. Again, they can contact me if they have any questions, and I'll give it to them again. But step number 1 is you have to recognize toxic thinking. Toxic thinking that starts with what if, or actually the easiest way to recognize it is if you start feeling anxious or worried or concerned, that was caused by what you were thinking right before that. So you stop and say, wait a minute, what was I just thinking? Okay, so I was thinking, what if I can't please this client? Okay, now we need to stop that kind of thinking right away. And the fastest way to do it is with a number 24 rubber band. Now, what number 24 rubber band is the kind of rubber band that comes in the mail. It's fat, it surrounds your mail, it would sit on your wrist loosely. It's a 64 rubber band, actually, that's the number. Sits on your wrist loosely. And so the first thing you do when you recognize you're into that toxic negative thinking, you snap the rubber band. You may have to do it more than once because the thought wants to pop back in again. It's a habit. You keep snapping until you can feel the pain and your brain is saying, okay, let's stop the thought. And once you've stopped the thought, step 2 is you need to relax your body. And the way you relax your body is you breathe in through your nose to the count of 4. You hold it for 4 seconds, and then a big exhale out your mouth to the count of 7. That's forcing you to breathe through your diaphragm the way athletes, musicians, and singers learn how to breathe, so that your stomach expands when you're breathing in and it contracts when you're breathing out. Most people don't normally breathe that way. When they breathe in, their chest or their shoulders move. That's narrow breathing and causes anxiety. You need to learn how to breathe slowly and deeply through your diaphragm. The best way is breathe in through your nose, hold it, and then out through your mouth. You do that a few times to take the anxiety away. And step 3, you're going to reframe your thinking because you're in control of your thoughts. You're going to reframe it to something that makes much more sense. The sky is not falling. We will get through this. The market will come back. I can help you to make a plan for the next time there's volatility in the market. Maybe there's a different kind of investment you want to get involved in. I can give you investments that will be guarantees if that's what you need, so that when this happens, they won't be controlled by the market. There are any number of ways of things I can help you. So actually what you've done, and you've actually, without asking this question, what you've really asked is, what are the 3 R's of one's performance IQ? The first one is recognize toxic thoughts, that trigger thoughts that come in your mind. And the best way to do that is when you feel anxious, think about what you were thinking about before that, because that's what the thought was. Number 2, reframe the thought after you do the breathing and relaxing. Reframe it into something that makes much more sense. And number 3, react to client concerns with active empathic listening, like we talked about earlier.
I don't even know where to go from that. It's such a great conclusion, and it's such a good thing to remember. I hope everybody did take notes, and if not, we'll have to share the replay. But Jack, this has been absolutely enlightening. I feel like I could talk to you all day. if I want more of this, if our advisors who are watching this want more of this knowledge for themselves or their clients, where do they go?
Well, there's a couple of things they can do. I have a course called Actionable Skills to Develop the Mindset of a Champion Financial Advisor. They can get 12 continuing education credit vouchers for that. And it's the only course of its type. They can take it as many times as they want for one fee. And for your listeners, I'll get a coupon for 30% off if they want to take this.
That's great. Thank you.
15%. I'm sorry, I forgot. 30% was
No,
for
30's good, Jack. 30's good.
Okay, 15%. But if they want my book, I can get them 30% off. And they can contact me, because that's the only way I can give them the coupon. Then I can direct them to the site. Okay. But if they contact me at drjack@advisingtheadvisors.com. So Dr. Jack at advisingtheadvisors.com, and I'll give them all the information. I will also, if they contact me there, I will give them my link to my mental toughness for advisors routine. Mm-hmm. And if they're interested in the book, I can give them 30% off the book as well. If they want to schedule a free chat with me, it won't be an hour, but it could be 30, 45 minutes, a free chat with me. Just have them send me an email, drjack@advisingtheadvisors.com, say that they'd like to schedule a free coaching chat, and I will set them up for that as well.
That's very generous. Thank you, Dr. Jack. And by the way, I just want to clarify, you said 12 CE credits on your course?
Yeah. Yeah, they get a voucher from Web CE, it's called.
Okay.
That's the company that has every course that's been approved for advisors in every state. Yeah. And with my voucher, they can take 12 of those for free. So they're getting 12 continuing education credits for free.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that offer. Thank you for this time. Thank you for your insights. We really appreciate it. It's been enlightening.
It's my pleasure, Robert. And you are the sharpest interviewer I've ever had. I have to tell you, it's almost like we rehearsed this and we really didn't.
We didn't. No, that's good. Well, thank you. I'll take the compliment.